Hello and welcome back to A Clear and Obvious podcast. As always, I'm Archie Corbett and I'm joined by the great Sam Cole. Sam, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Archie. Yeah, how are you, mate?
I'm not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Lapping up the last bits of the sun. But yes, it's been good so far. But enough about us, because we are joined by a very, very special guest. We are joined by ex-Premier League referee and all-round one of football's good guys, Mark Clattenburg.
Best referee of the year, Mark Clattenburg.
Time for the talking to stop and the action to start. Mark Clattenburg waits for the signal from the floor manager to get the 2016 Champions League final underway.
Quite connect with it. Fernando Torres and Pepe was in there, and Mark Clattenburg says penalty. Clumsy from Pepe.
The referee Clattenburg's already given the free kick and booked Chris Smalling. It's a big moment in the game. That's what he's booked.
Should have been 3 red cards to Tottenham. Are allowed them to self-destruct.
Mark, firstly, how are you?
I'm very well. I wouldn't say a good guy. I was always the bad guy, wasn't I? Always sending players off. But no, everything's good. Left China and enjoying life back in the UK. And it's been a difficult period for everyone because of this virus. But now that there's football back on the TV, everybody seems to have a smile on their face today.
Certainly seems to have papered over the cracks, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll go straight in. And it only seems right to start with your childhood and your upbringing. So what was your upbringing like? Obviously brought up around the Newcastle area. How was it for you?
Yeah, I was born in Durham, so a bit of a Mackem, but I never wanted to support someone. I was always wanting to support Newcastle. And my family moved to a place called Blythe, which is north of Newcastle, council estate. 2 brothers, 2 sisters. Played football from a young age, loved football, but what was different was we weren't allowed to play football till I was 9 years old. We never had junior teams. The youngest you could play was under 11. So therefore you had to wait to play football. But we did play in the schools. Always enjoyed playing, always wanted to play. And like every child, I always wanted to play for my home team, which was Newcastle. But that quickly changed, of course, the older I got. But no, I enjoyed my childhood, and I just wanted Newcastle to win a trophy, which I still haven't been able to see in my lifetime yet, but that's life. A bit like Fulham. But no, in general, no, it was a really good upbringing, but never thought about refereeing at a young age.
Yeah.
I think it's a bizarre thing to think about when every young child wants to play football.
Yeah, because we just obviously picture you as a referee. It's tricky to imagine you as a player. What sort of position were you? Were you sort of a tough tackling centre-half or a flair winger? Where did you play?
I was up front when I started, and then I think I got fatter and fatter, so I ended up winger. Then I couldn't run as much, so I ended up as fullback. And I think most fullbacks will say that it's always the least favourable position. So I ended up as fullback, and I did okay. I wasn't a bad player. I didn't develop as much as I should have, and maybe a young child thought I was better than I was. And it was 16-year-old. My school teacher came to us and said, "Mark, you're not going to make it as a professional footballer. Why not try a refereeing course?" And it was an 8-week course. Thought, yeah, I may as well understand the laws of the game. I bought myself a kit and started refereeing junior football, but I was still playing at the time, so it was still quite fresh, thinking I'd still play, but earn a little bit of money refereeing, and did some youth matches. And quickly before I knew it, I was class 1, which was an old system years ago. You started off at class 3, and I was class 1 at 18, and then refereeing semi-professional football very early in my age. So it was quite a quick development. But at 24-year-old, I become the youngest ever Football League referee, and then 29 become a Premier League referee, which then become a profession because there were full-time referees then. So it quickly moved from something that you enjoy to being a job.
Yeah, because as you say, you came into professional refereeing very early, as you say. But do you remember specifically your first ever game refereeing when you were a lad?
No, but I can't recall that far. But I remember it would have been a youth match. Might have been me dad. I think it might have been one of my dad's teams at Wide Open. So that would probably make more sense because that allowed me to referee matches without much criticism, because If any of the parents shouted, then the sons wouldn't be playing the following week because the manager, which was my dad, would have stopped them playing because they were abusing his son. But no, I enjoyed refereeing some youth matches, and it allowed us to gain confidence, because as a young person, that's what you want to get. You're going to be shouted at, of course, because it seems to be the culture that referees are the ones that always get abused. And it was just, give us the confidence to go on. But yeah, I think it was definitely me father's. I remember the older ones, certainly when I got into the professional game in Europe and everything else. But from a youth match, no, I can't really remember. But it'd probably be my dad's team.
You mentioned it briefly there, and of course, a big part of being a referee is dealing with the abuse that comes with it. How do you personally deal with the abuse? Do you have any coping mechanisms to help you through it?
I think when you're younger, you find it more difficult because it gets to heart. But I suppose when I was younger-ish, really young, there was no social media, there was no mobile phones, so therefore it was difficult for any abuse, unless you've seen somebody in the street, which was very rare. And then now it's more and more because of the social media that if you decide to read it, there's an awful lot of negatives. There's very little positive, especially with that you've been a referee, because you're always going to upset one team, and the referee always seems to be the villain of the piece. But the way I dealt with it later on was it was just mental strength, and I tried to concentrate what I felt was my strong points or what was good about it, and try and dismiss the external side, because if you did, it would affect you, certainly your performances, and it would affect your mental state, because what I read on the internet now, oh my God, oh my Lord, it's horrific. Death threats, abused, and I'm still getting abused now, even though I've been out of the Premier League for 3 years.
Is there, you mentioned it there, is there a difference in how you deal with it to deal with abuse online rather than in person? Because of course, social media coming in, and you've said you've receiving all these horrible messages. How do you deal with it differently online?
You just don't look at it. If you want to look at it, you know that you're gonna be abused. So the easiest thing to do is just avoid looking at it. And but I think it's everybody's thing that they just want to have a little look, and then you get carried away because there's nobody going to say some nice words about you. But I try to avoid it. I wasn't on social media when I was a referee. I have to be now because I'm working for media. But in the time when I was a referee, no, I don't think many referees have social media accounts at the top level, because they know that the exposure is going to be so big that people are going to abuse you and give you death threats when you make a decision against them.
Is there a game that sticks out in your mind where you've just received an absolute torrent of abuse, whether it be the 60,000 people in the stadium shouting the referee's a banker or whatever, or you get it online afterwards? So what is there one that sticks out in your mind after a certain game, for instance?
Yeah, definitely. It would have been the Merseyside Derby, 2007, I think it was. And it was just, I didn't have the best of games. In fact, I didn't have a good game at all, and made some mistakes in the game that affected Everton, especially against your arch enemy. And the abuse I took was just unreal. It was the first time I'd ever been abused like that. They were actually ringing me house up. They were sending us things through the post. And people think, well, how do you get your address? Actually, I told the postman off because people were just writing my name on an envelope, and the Royal Mail thought they were doing us a favour by delivering us the letter. So I had to say to them, don't deliver us any letters that only have my name on, because some of the stuff in letters, what they were going to do to us, what they were going to do to my family, was just, you can send it to the police, but the police can't trace it. So it was difficult. And some of the abuse that they used to say down me home phone, they used to ring it every week. And abuse us. So in the end, you had to turn the phone off, and it just disappeared after a while. Yeah, you still get it now on social media, but at that time, it was my first experience of torrent abuse. And some of it, because the game wasn't the best of my performances, some people say, well, I deserve it, but I certainly deserve criticism, but I certainly don't deserve the death threats I got.
Yeah, because as a referee, you don't really have any sort of scope to reply to that. It's not like anyone that's sending a letter is going to put like a return address on it or anything. You don't have that voice to reply. Is that something you wish referees would have?
If it's done in the right way, of course. If you're explaining something, I think there's such a transparency in the world now that people want to hear and see and act on what's happened on the pitch. Like anything that happens, I think it could be a good thing that the referee explains what happened, but I'm not sure the media would assist that, because sometimes words can be twisted and meant different ways. So, and I think then referees would have to be media trained, which is another aspect. And I think at the moment the referees should certainly have a body that speaks on their behalf to give their side of view, because it's important for people to understand that referees are human, and they make mistakes, of course they do, but it's like all walks of life. Everybody makes mistakes at work, but referees, especially at the top level, can't hide the mistakes like everybody else can, and that's something that you have to deal with. And you try and explain to people, hey, I've made a mistake. Did you not make a mistake yesterday? Yeah, but because you were a football referee, what's the difference? But unfortunately, that's people's mentality.
So on from probably quite a negative part of your trade onto what most would consider, and maybe yourself as well, consider the pinnacle of your career. 2016, refereeing the FA Cup final, the European Championships final, and the Champions League final. Out of those three specifically, which do you have the fondest memories of?
Champions League final, without doubt. It was, I think, being in a tournament's always different. Being 4 weeks together as a team, and with all the other referees, you've been away from home, you're in the same hotel, you wear the same kit every day, you do the same routine every day, get up for breakfast, you go training, you have your dinner, we played pool, we try to walk around the lake where we're staying just outside Paris every day. It become quite monotonous, and in the end it's an anticlimax when it's over. But with the Champions League, it's a one-off match, and when I'd refereed the semi-final, Atletico against Bayern, and I didn't dream I was going to referee the final. So to get the final was a shock, because nobody had ever refereed a semi-final and final at the same competition. So it was such a shock to get it, and to referee the two Madrid sides in Milan, which is one of my favourite cities, was a dream come true.
Because you talk about sort of how you fondly remember that specific game. If you had to give yourself, I don't know, let's say rating out of 10 for that game, do you think there's sort of a 10 out of 10 game that you could have had? And if so, was that it?
Yeah, that was probably it for me. But people will always criticise because there was decisions in the game, which there was an offside. Real Madrid's goal was slightly offside when you watch the replays, and that's matter of fact, so it's not opinion. Simon Becker, who was my assistant, got it wrong. If we'd had the VAR there, then it would have been corrected. But that's something out of my control as a referee. I can't control the assistant referees. It's their job, and he'd made an error. But then Atletico Madrid had a penalty in the second half, which they missed. That's not my fault. And it went to penalties, and Atletico player missed again, and Real Madrid win the match. So, Atletico Madrid had numerous opportunities, and did have numerous opportunities to get back in the game. It finished 1-1. But I remember the game was tough. It was a local derby, a derby as such, and the temperatures, the final, the billions of people that are going to be watching it, the pressures, and for that, nobody can ever, experience that type of thing, that you're in control of one of the biggest sporting events in the world. And the feeling when I blew that final whistle was an amazing feeling, because the pressure that's been built up for days and hours before the game, suddenly that it's over. And picking me medal up was quite a nice feeling, and the crowd were very complimentary, and afterwards the compliments that I'd got, because the way I'd controlled it, let the game flow as much as I could, and didn't react to any of the play action from certainly from some of the Real Madrid players. I had a big satisfaction, but I never slept that night because of the adrenaline. It kicked in so much. I was still wide awake at 7-8 o'clock in the morning, and I think players are the same, that when you've been involved in such an event like that, it's very difficult to sleep.
From refereeing the Premier League, Champions League, all in Europe, you then made a move to Saudi Arabia, where you took up a different role. What were the factors in your decision to move to Saudi Arabia?
I would love to tell you the real reason. No, one of the main reasons there's two reasons. One, refereeing is such a short career. It hadn't been done before where a referee had moved from one country to the other. Players do it, but referees hadn't. And the opportunity came up to protect me, look after my family in the long term. But also, it was a project that I was looking forward to. I'd done everything in the Premier League. I'd refereed every game in the Premier League at 13 years. I'd done the Champions League final, done the Euro final, done every other final, Super Cup, been involved in FIFA tournaments. The only thing that I hadn't done was a World Cup final. And I knew I wasn't going to referee the World Cup final. I'm not naive enough and stupid enough to think I was going to referee the World Cup final, because I would have been the only referee ever to referee every match, every big final. So I wasn't that naive. So I thought it's a good opportunity now to find something a project that excites us, and a new challenge in life, and it's a new culture. And I enjoyed the culture. And after leaving 2 years, I was in Saudi for 2 years, and then I was offered to go to China, which was another culture. And it's brilliant that I've had, before I got to 45, I'd had 2 other cultures, and an enjoyable thing in life to live in these parts of the world and referee, because I was refereeing in Saudi as well as being the boss. But then in China, I was just a referee.
Yeah, you mentioned your time in China there. Were the factors or similar to your move to Saudi the same as when you moved to China?
No, because China was different. I was asked to referee the cup final during when I was in Saudi, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being in Beijing, and it's different. Saudi Arabia is a hugely different country to China it is to England. For example, in Saudi Arabia, you can't have alcohol. You have prayer time 6 times a day where everything closes. So, for example, if you go into a restaurant in Saudi Arabia and it's about to be prayer time, they lock the doors. You can't go into a restaurant. You can't drink alcohol. There's very little for a foreign person to do. You're living in a compound, which is heavily secured. So there's a lot of difficult things about Saudi Arabia. The weather, it was just extremely hot all year round, where China is very similar to being a Western country, because you can live like I can in England, but it was in China. My family loved being in China. They never went to Saudi Arabia because it's more difficult for my family to enjoy Saudi Arabia. They couldn't go out. Women weren't allowed to drive when I was in Saudi Arabia, so therefore my wife couldn't drive in Saudi, where at least in China they could come and enjoy the culture. So it was an easy decision, and to go and see another part of the world after 2 years. I think being in Saudi for 2 years was just enough.
You brought up an interesting point there about a referee not necessarily being able to, but not refereeing all of the major finals. Why is that? Is there sort of like a competition between referees, or is it?
No, I just think it's nobody wants to be. Nobody would want to have the referee at 43, 44-year-olds still potentially got many years ahead to absolutely have everything. You need to have some sort of goals, and my goal would have been, it would have been nice to go to the World Cup final, but it was the goals before it. I had to wait 2 years for the World Cup finals, and I'd had enough of not enough of the Premier League. It was enough that I'd done every game, and I was hot. I was finding it difficult to motivate myself, and certainly I couldn't referee the Champions League final again. I would have been highly, and I know for a fact, factually, the FA Cup final you can only referee it once. So what else is there? What other challenge was there? And England, England did really well in the tournaments. That would have probably ended me World Cup anyways. So I made the right decision overall, and it's also about the now moment. I always believe in the now moment. You can't think in 2 years' time I could referee in the World Cup and potentially referee the World Cup final, because you could get injured. you could be out of form, you could make mistakes in a couple of games, and then all of a sudden your season's over. And one of my good friends, Jonas Eriksson, who was one of the top referees in Europe for many years, he refereed the Europa League final in 2016. He didn't even go to the World Cup. He wasn't nominated at the last moment. So, I could wait all this time, and then my name wasn't selected for the World Cup. So I always believe in the now moment, and Saudi Arabia offered us a contract that was too good to turn down, and I took the decision. But I hope that in the future that referees can move. I think it would be beneficial around the world that referees have, a bit like players, can not transfer fees, but certainly be allowed to referee in other countries, because I think it would be healthy, because countries are sometimes they see the same referee too many times, and it's nice that they get different variety, and it would be probably good in the future. But I did it. Milorad Masic then went to China with me. He left the Champions League and Serbian football to go to China as well. So there is a bit of movement, but I don't think it's going to be long term, and how many people is going to do it in the future. I hope to see it happen.
Because could there have been a world where you would have been able to referee in that 2018 World Cup and do your rollout in Saudi, or was that like a no go?
It was difficult because I was affiliated to the Football Association in England. Because I was going to Saudi Arabia, I had to reapply through the Saudi Arabian Football Federation. I could have done it, but it wasn't right, because they had a nomination, and he was a young referee, and it would have been extremely unfair that I'd taken his position, and it's not right to take that position. And also, the Asian football referees only had so many nominations, and it would have been just not correct for me to take one of their nominations. So it was just that wasn't my decision, and it was never in my thought process that I wanted to take that decision.
That's fair enough. So sort of back to your time in Europe and in England specifically. We don't really see it, obviously, from the outside. What's the relationship like between referees?
Very competitive. I think there's been different generations, because I've been in the Premier League that long. When I first got in the Premier League, there was big characters like Graham Poll, Rob Styles, Jeff Winter, very big personalities, and I was just a young kid on the block. So I just, kept quiet, learned from these guys, and then eventually Howard Webb started to come through, and then I followed Howard Webb through. So then I become mainly like the talisman of the group, because I was the one that was refereeing most of the big games, and most of the big games in Europe. So, I was the one that people looked up to, and I was the one that was responsible. That if I had a bad performance on a Saturday, it seemed to be that the group was getting criticised. So you had a big responsibility. But in general, it's very competitive. Everybody, some guys will certainly want the big games, some don't, and that's just life. And they're happy to be fourth officials are doing less games. But there was a lot of friendships in the end. There seemed to be a bit more bonding in the group when I left, and I'm sure that they bonded again, and they're a strong group, and I can see it, the way they are as a group, that they are very strong.
So you talk about sort of the big names there in refereeing when you first came through. The one that sticks out in my mind, just because he's one of the scariest human beings I've ever seen, is Pierluigi Collina. What was your relationship like with him?
Very, very special guy. I was scared of him when I first met him. I first met him at Soccer Aid in Manchester, and I was just in awe of him. He had this presence about him, because he'd done everything. He was an outstanding referee, and he was my boss. He was he was the big boss in UEFA for referees, and it was interesting because I had the chance to then develop with him, because I was starting to move into the higher categories in UEFA, and started refereeing in Champions League football. And he was he helped me massively in my career. He was a big supporter of mine, and he liked my style of refereeing. He tried to improve And he did. He was my observer in a semi-final of a Champions League game in 2015, and he educated me more about tactics and what players could do and trying to solve them before they happen, because the best referee in the world is the ones that solve everything before you even see it. So it doesn't happen. So therefore, everybody goes, "Oh, the referee had a good game today," because nothing happened. But because a lot of top referees are solving all the problems before, for example, blocking at corners and holding, and he taught me an awful lot about refereeing, and that's why I was successful in 2016. Yeah, he appointed us to the Champions League final. Yes, he pointed us to the Euro final. But the amount of information and the amount of support he gave us was just huge. And I never can't thank the man enough. And I don't see him scary anymore. I see him as a gentle giant, really, but a guy who you can speak to. And if any young referee ever gets the chance to listen to him, you can learn an awful lot.
It's interesting there. So you talk about your relationship with him, and obviously he was sort of the big kind of boss of all sort of the European referees. You hear about players getting a proper bollocking from their manager. Did you ever get did he ever have a proper go at you after maybe you had a bad game or you made a slip up or something? Was that ever the case?
I didn't have many slip ups in Europe. I didn't have many bad games in Europe. That's not me being bigoted. Having many bad games, don't underestimate. But I didn't have many abroad. But I remember he really, really laid into us. It was after a Champions League game in Malmo against Atletico Madrid. And it's amateurish what I did, but it was what all did as referees. So I was the one that something happened, and it's like expect the unexpected. And we didn't go to the morning meetings, the referee, so that was stopped. So the observer went. He said the team colours are okay. This is what you're wearing, because UEFA used to tell us what we're wearing. So we were going to wear yellow. No problems. It was like a yellow gold colour. So I left all my other kits. I badged my kit up in the afternoon of the game, and then I leave all my other kits in my hotel room. So I just take the one kit because I've been taught what I've got to wear. And then in the tunnel, Atletico Madrid have got a tracksuit top on, and after the handshake, they take the tops off. They've got exactly the same colour as me on. It's a Champions League match. Everybody's watching it worldwide, globally. It was just embarrassing. So at half time, it gets to half time, and I say to the guys, how many kits have we got? Black. And unfortunately, there was only two. So what we did was I just put it on, kept the two assistants in the gold, and the emails and the conversations I had afterwards just weren't pleasant. And I remember flying home the next day thinking, I'm not going to get another match. I'm going to be criticised, and he's going to drop us for the rest of the season, because doesn't matter how well you referee. This was an image thing that UEFA and Champions League shouldn't have happened. And but like a couple of weeks later, he points us to another match, and he told us what he expected from us, and then I realised that I have to get to them standards. I shouldn't have let my standards drop. So I learned from it, and the way he delivered it was just perfectly. He made his point, but then 2 weeks later, he's given us another game, and it's a bit like a striker missing 3 open goals in one game. The next game, if you give him another chance, he'd probably work that extra 20%. So yeah, it was such a nice relationship to have. That you would get a bollocking, but on the other side is he would also reward you if you were doing well.
Referees and officials obviously spend a lot of time together, obviously on the pitch and then training together. Is there any other referees that you've really formed bonds with and become friends with through your or through the same profession?
Yeah, it's probably the older generation. I'm still good friends with Mark Halsey. When I was going through the Premier League, I was good friends with Phil Dowd. Me and Phil used to room together. We used to be the jokers. We used to hype things. We used to do silly things. So he was like me. He took me under his wing, and he was my first fourth official when I first refereed on my Premier League game, and he was a good guy to have around. So yeah, Phil was me first, but I've always kept in touch with Mark Halsey. He lives out in Spain now, and we always contact each other. He writes for the Sun and I write for the Mail, so we've got a bit of competition. But no, he's a nice guy to have around. The new generation, I sometimes speak, like, I used to play a bit of golf with Michael Oliver, not as much now because I've been living away for 3 years and not many people know I'm home. So I don't really advertise much. I just keep my life to myself. So yeah, I don't really keep in touch as much of the younger generation, but certainly some of the older guys I like to keep in touch with, because they were the good times before it got completely, so scrutinized in the modern day, because football, unfortunately, life's changed and football's changed. You can't get anywhere without somebody putting a mobile phone up and taking videos of you.
You talk about the sort of those old times with the referees that you had some pretty close bonds with. Did you have any like referees' nights out? Like, would you ever go out on the town, or any like sort of fancy dress stuff that you go to? Were there any you particularly remember?
Yeah, no, we used to have Christmas parties, but that was always in the hotel, because we used to be based in Daventry. So that's where we used to meet up years ago and have the Christmas parties there. We would have some bonding together. I remember having I think it was Freshers Week, and we ended up out. I don't know how we ended up on it. It was Freshers Week. It must have been just the timing, and we're all having a night out, and then it was in Coventry. So yeah, but I had bonds with people that you didn't need to have nights out with. I've always got. What's interesting is it was my job, and I like to have friends outside of my job. So I've got lots of people who have got nothing to do with refereeing sport, and they're my close friends, and they treat me like I'm just one of them. So yeah, I try and split the profession with the outside world. So yeah, I still keep in touch, like the odd one, but like from the Phil, but from nights out regularly, like I would have with my mates. It's very rare.
So sort of on a night out, say you're not with your referees and someone recognises you, do you get the classic, oh, Clattenburg, get your cards out, or have you got a whistle with you? Do you ever get that sort of thing, or is it sort of pretty low key?
No, because if I go out, it's in Newcastle, so it's quite handy, because everybody wants to talk Newcastle, and people don't criticise us because I'm a Newcastle fan. So, and most people who speak to you in life don't criticise you. It's the more ones that hide behind the keyboard and are faceless. So they're the ones that always go out and criticise you. But the ones that come up and speak to you, you get a lot of people just know who you are, and you've got to be careful what you do and how you act. Because I remember going into a shop, and it was a Poundland to buy some batteries. And it was on social media saying, why is Mark Clattenburg in Poundland? Can he not afford to buy some batteries from somewhere else? And I think, well, the batteries are the same. It doesn't matter where you buy them from. But it was just because I was in Poundland, and the thing, because you earn all this money because I'm a referee, I shouldn't be in Poundland. It's like, I'm just like one of you.
It's almost like you can't sort of be expected to kind of live this sort of normal life without being kind of criticised in some sort of way. You talk about obviously being a Newcastle fan. Since you've become like a top level referee, have you been able to sort of split kind of, you're a football fan at the heart of it. Are you able to kind of, after a game that you've refereed, come home and then watch another football game? Or is it splitting your profession and what you loved? Because do you have that sort of same passion as being a football fan now as you did when you weren't a referee, is sort of what I'm trying to say?
No, I think it's different now. I'm older because I've got a family, and I've got a daughter, and I've got an older son. So it's a balance between my work life and not bringing it home. Like yesterday, I watched a bit of football because I think I was like every man up and down the country watching the football, and the women were complaining. And my wife was no different. It was just because it was new and it was back on. Plus, I had to work for the Daily Mail in case something happened, which it did. But I try and watch my games back for sure. I want to learn from my decisions, what I could have done right, what I did well. So it gives us the confidence for the next match. Because if you look at everything negative, then it's going to drag you down mentally. And I used to then prepare for the games maybe 3 or 4 days before, trying to start looking at different trends about the teams, and prepare myself for the match. So I try and keep me refereeing separate to my family. It was easier because I was full time, so I could go to the gym for an hour in the morning and not affect the family, and certainly analyse me some videos, and so I wasn't having to go to work then train, and then do some like analysts and do some videos, and not spending any time with the family. I was at home quite a bit, so it was easy to manage that.
Well, so we'll wrap it up fairly soon. Just sort of one more on my front. So how do you kind of so you saw that obviously you watched the Sheffield United Villa game, I'm assuming, yesterday. What's your take on obviously the big talking point in that game, like the goal line technology not working? How, if you're in Michael Oliver's shoes, what do you do?
It's not Michael Oliver's fault. He's got to watch. He's tested it beforehand. He's accepted that it's working, which it would have been. It would have been working possibly before the match, because he would have had. Normally, what happens is players are kicking towards the goals with the spare balls, the substitutes or the players who were warming up. So the watch would have been working, and he wouldn't have thought anything else when the match starts, because the watch seems to go dead because there's nobody kicking the balls inside the goal. So therefore, the watch goes dead, and you just believe that the technology is working. And at no point did Hawkeye have any problems with the system. So it's either a unique. I know Hawkeye have made a statement today, and they're saying it's a unique event, but I find it strange, because we did all these tests, and ironically, it was at Villa Park, where the Premier League referees were all invited to Villa Park to trial the system, to have a look at the system. To see how it works. And we were putting balls up with jumpers, we're hiding the ball, we're pretending we're a scrum, just lots of different scenarios, because we're trying to get it not to work, and it always worked. We carried the ball over, holding it like this so you couldn't see us. We'd hide it behind the post doing this. We'd push it down the side netting, because there was always some errors with it very early on. Like, for example, you could push the side netting too much, and it would think that the ball's inside the goal, but that got solved fairly quickly with maybe some tweaks in their system. So it's worked for, 9,000 matches this year. We can say 9,000 matches. We don't know. But what we can say is it did work without any issues till last night. But I think what has caused more controversy is that, technology can fail. Internet can fail with us guys tonight doing a podcast. It can happen. This is life. You might not have recorded it. This is technology. Things happen. But we had a second backup, and the second backup was the VAR. And for the VAR not to check it, because he believed that the technology was working, it's a flawed. He's got a flawed mentality and a flawed system, because just because there's a technology in place, human beings should always check. And he should have checked that. Oh, I would like to see if that ball's in, or how far that was in. And then he had at least 1 minute, because there was no stoppage in play. Could have easily have checked and went, oh, that's a bit close. And then he could have advised Michael Oliver to stop the game and then get the decision correct. But he didn't. But then there's the other side of it. Stuart Bird, who was an assistant, could have said to Michael Oliver, I think that's close. That I would like that checked because of technology, or that looked in. But he's not going to be given the decision because he believes all the technology is in place. Why? If it's a millimetre over the line, it's impossible for a match official to see it. You're guessing. So let's be 100% sure that's what the technology is in place for. So Stuart Bird could have said to the VAR, please, I'm not sure the technology worked there. Can we just check that the ball was not over the line? And that could have then sent a message to the VAR to wake up and have a look at the decision. So there's many different errors that's compounded a decision that shouldn't have evaded the technology, because when you've got a ball over the line, or any decision that's matter of fact, it shouldn't be getting missed. And it's such a decision that can affect Sheffield United's chance to play in Europe. It's 1 point closer for Aston Villa getting out of relegation, so the team's at the bottom. And I just think that overall it was a bad day, certainly for Pigeon Well, for the VAR system, and it shouldn't happen, because we want to be talking about football, not about scandalous refereeing decisions.
You've had a esteemed career refereeing the Premier League. You've refereed the Euros, Champions League final, your ventures into Saudi Arabia and China. I was just wondering, what do you think the next 10 years will be for Mark Clattenburg?
I've got a plan. I want to eventually move out to Spain. That's the 10-year plan when my daughter gets old enough, and I want to live out there. I want to top my tan up, play a bit of golf, and enjoy life. It's been 15 years of really tough mental and physical demands. But at the moment, I'm enjoying the 6 month off. I'm really refreshed. I want a new challenge. I'm not sure that will be as a referee. I'm 45-year-old and I'm getting old. People will say, "We hold on." There's people who are 52 refereeing in the Premier League. A lot of it's mental as well as physicals, and I really want to take a job in developing referees. If it's at home or abroad, I would like to put what I've learned back into refereeing and coaching referees to be better and more understand football more, and hopefully make them more successful. So yeah, I'm looking at opportunities, and but at the moment I'm enjoying life and getting my golf handicap down, which is always a good sign.
Well, Mark, you deserve to kick your feet up and enjoy sunny Spain, certainly very soon. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. You've been a brilliant guest. And yeah, thank you very much.
No problem. Good luck, guys. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.